Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us today, the first ever Church Times Live.
But I thought we'd start first by just hearing a bit about you, Richard, first.
And people ask me if we're campaigners, and the answer is we're campaigners for evidence. You know, all the kind of issues that we have at the moment.
So one of the big questions about this always is how robust is the science behind the view that A, the planet is warming up, and B, we can do something about it.
So is the planet warming? Unequivocally. Is it mainly down to greenhouse gases? Well, the best evidence suggests that since about the 1970s, it's actually all down to greenhouse gases. There are natural cycles, natural phenomena that affect the Earth's temperature, but now that the evidence is now that all of that is being swamped by greenhouse gas warming. The rate of warming is extraordinary in terms of Earth history. So if you want to, you can say, well, that's a computer model, it's not perfect, and so I'm just going to ignore the answer. But I would say if you take that view, what are you going to do instead? What are you just going to ignore it, or have you got something better? And so far, no one has got anything better. And because of it's not just the scale of the warming, but it's the speed of the warming. Nature can adapt, and societies can adapt to changes. Nature always adapts, societies always. But the speed of the change is so extraordinary, so unprecedented in Earth history. People, talk about, well, nature can adapt, or maybe it's okay, we won't really have, commercial fisheries in the way that we have them now, but it's fine, because we just won't eat fish or we'll fish farm. Well, again, you can do that, but why do we want a world like that? Coral reefs, currently if at 2 Celsius of global warming, the evidence is that 99% of coral reefs around the world will be severely degraded, perhaps dead. Why do we want a world like that? We can live in it, we can have a human society, but why would we want that? So I think that's probably the right way in which to sort of think about the seriousness of it. Yeah, the last couple, we did go back to the Paris summit of December 2015, when governments agreed, for the first time, basically every government agreed to constrain its greenhouse gas emissions. And the governments agreed that they would keep global warming well below 2 Celsius and make efforts to limit it to 1.5 Celsius. And we're already about 1 Celsius, so it's a tough ask. The thing is, that 1.5 Celsius target came in at the behest of some of the poorest, most vulnerable countries, particularly the small island states and some of the poorest countries in Africa, because they see 1.5 as being the sort of limit above which existential threats occur. And you can see if you are a small island out in the Pacific and actually fishing is your main source of food and source of revenue, and tourism perhaps a little bit on the side, you can see why 1.5 Celsius is a sort of existential threshold. What do the impacts of climate change look like at 1.5 Celsius versus the old political target of 2 Celsius? And secondly, can we get there? Can we actually deliver on that pledge to limit global warming to 1.5 Celsius? So that report came out about 10 days ago, and this really formed the basis of the reason why we did this special edition of the Church Times. The coral reefs is actually a very good example, about 99% gone at 2 Celsius, at 1.5, 70 to 90%. The number of people around the world that will be exposed to water scarcity, that will be exposed to frequent severe heat waves, that sort of thing, they tend to be different by a factor of about 2 or 3 between 1.5 and 2. Essentially, we need to halve emissions of greenhouse gases by 2030, little more than a decade, and bring them down to net zero for carbon dioxide at mid-century. And currently, emissions are going up. In my view, this report is one of the most important, well, possibly the most important climate change report there's ever been, because governments have agreed to do something. They've agreed to, deliver a tangible thing, and the IPCC is telling them what they need to do in order to do it. So now the questions get very crunchy. As you, government A, have you actually put in place policies that can bring your carbon dioxide emissions down to zero by mid-century? Because if you haven't, you're actually failing to deliver on this promise that you made on this big international stage.